Lucia was just pouring wine when she heard it. The whisper was low, but clear. The moment he says, "Cheers," we finish him. Her hand paused mid-pour. The Mafia boss had not yet entered, but his reputation always arrived first. The rain outside beat against the windows of Rosario's like nervous fingers. Inside, dim lights flickered off polished wood and scar tables. Thursday nights were usually slow. Tonight felt loaded, as if the air itself was holding its breath. Lucia had worked here 2 years, long enough to spot who belonged and who didn't. Booth 7, the dark corner most diners avoided, held 3 men who definitely didn't belong. She had served them once already. They ignored their osso buco, whispering more than eating. The youngest kept checking his watch. The scarred one stared at the entrance. The heavy man with gold teeth drummed his fingers, a sound that made her skin crawl. Table 12 needs more wine. Tony, the head waiter, snapped her back to reality. Lucia grabbed a bottle of Chianti and moved across the floor. Passing Booth 7, the words floated out again like a threat. The moment he says salute, we strike. Her stomach turned to ice. Salute, Italian for cheers. But who? Her question was answered seconds later. The front door swung open with a flourish, and Don Vito Castellano walked in like he owned not just a restaurant but the entire block. He probably did. Lucia had heard his name whisper in the neighborhood. Problem solved, debts collected, justice delivered when the police wouldn't. He was younger than she expected, maybe 45, silver streaking his black hair, eyes sharp and calculating. 3 of his men fanned out behind him. Suits crisp, movements predator smooth, weapons hidden but obvious to anyone who knew what to look for. Maria, the owner, greeted him instantly. "Your usual table, Don Vito." "Perfetto," he replied, voice warm but commanding, settling in his preferred spot. Table 4, dead center, where he could see and be seen. Lucia glanced back at Booth 7. All 3 men had gone rigid. The scarred man's hand slipped beneath his jacket. The heavy one crushed his napkin. The youngest stared fixedly at Don Vito. Her blood went cold. They weren't here for dinner. They were here to kill him. Don Vito raised his glass. "My friends, tonight we celebrate life, family, and the bonds that make us strong." Lucia's heart hammered. He always ended with salute. 30 seconds, maybe less, and this room would explode. Her instinct screamed, "Stay out of it. Pretend you heard nothing. Survive." But she couldn't. Maybe it was the warmth in his smile when he greeted Maria. Maybe it was the unspoken neighborhood code. Protect your own. Or maybe she just couldn't watch someone die when she could stop it. She moved, wine bottle in hand, bright smile fixed. She glided toward Don Vito's table like any attentive waitress. "More wine for your celebration?" she asked softly. He looked up at her. His eyes were darker than she expected, measuring, precise. She noticed the scar on his chin, the tailored suit, the watch that screamed power. "Of course, Bella," he said, lifting his glass expectantly. This was it. In seconds, he would toast the room, and Booth 7 would strike. Lucia leaned forward to pour the wine, bringing her face close to his ear. To anyone watching, it looked like exceptional service. "Don't talk," she whispered. Don Vito froze. His hand stopped midair. His eyes snapped to hers, searching her face with laser intensity. The restaurant held its breath, waiting for his famous toast. Instead, he slowly lowered his glass. "Perhaps," he said carefully, "we should savor the moment in silence tonight." Across the room, the 3 men in Booth 7 exchanged confused glances. The scarred one stayed rigid. The youngest fidgeted with his watch. The heavy one's eyes darted nervously. Without the signal, they were lost. Don Vito raised his glass slightly, but only nodded and sipped. No words. No trigger. No murder. Lucia stepped back, legs trembling. She had done it, prevented a killing without anyone realizing, except Don Vito. She could feel his gaze following her as she moved away, questions burning in his dark eyes. In Booth 7, 3 dangerous men were realizing their careful plan had just collapsed. Don Vito's smile remained for the crowd, but his fingers clenched the wine glass like a man gripping sanity. Unexpected whispers meant betrayal or salvation. The trick was knowing which before you ended up dead. He took another sip, buying time. His men were watching him, waiting for a sign. Marco, his trusted bodyguard of 15 years, appeared at his elbow, hand resting inside his jacket. "Everything all right, boss?" Marco murmured. "Perfect," Vito said smoothly. "Just appreciating the service here." But nothing was perfect. In the corner of his eye, Booth 7's occupants were restless. Too polished for tourists, too tense for locals. Predators waiting for a cue they never got. "Marco," Vito said quietly, "the 3 men in booth 7, you see them?" Marco's eyes flicked without moving his head. "Yeah, boss. Nursing drinks for an hour. Not eating. Watching the room." Vito nodded. Men who didn't belong. Men with a purpose. The waitress reappeared, this time near booth 7. She moved like she'd done this for years, efficient, invisible, but also positioned herself to listen. She'd overheard something. That much was clear. If she'd warned him, she might have saved him. But in Vito's world, protection often came with a price tag. He called softly, "Dom." Domenico Torino, his consigliere for 30 years, approached from the bar, thin as a stiletto, eyes like ice. "The waitress," Vito murmured. "What do you make of her?" Dom studied Lucia for a full minute. "She's scared," he said finally, "but not of us. Scared enough to act. Brave or foolish. Sometimes the same thing." Booth 7 was now a low boil of whispered argument. The scarred man's face darkened. The youngest shook his head violently. They were unraveling. She could be working with them, Dom warned softly. "Get close, gain your trust." He didn't finish. Both men knew how those stories ended. Or, Vito said thoughtfully, "she could be the only reason I'm still breathing." The 3 men stood abruptly, dropping cash on the table, moving toward the exit without looking back. But the scar man's eyes swept the restaurant one last time, like a predator marking future prey. Vito watched Lucia clearing a nearby table. She recognized them. More than that, she feared them. Bone-deep terror. The pieces fit. She knew they were, and they knew her. "Dom," Vito said, voice low, "after closing, have a conversation with our waitress. Find out what she knows. If she's lying," his smile was sharp as glass, "we'll know." Outside, rain slicked the street. The 3 men huddled near their car, their plan in ruins. Scar, the leader, lit a cigarette. Frustration etched across his damaged face. He was supposed to say it. Tommy hissed. "He always says it. Every Thursday." "Shut up and think." Scar snapped, scanning the street. Something spooked him. Maybe someone tipped him off. Goldie muttered, gold teeth flashing. "Only the 3 of us knew," Tommy protested. Scar's eyes narrowed. "You were about to say someone else. Weren't you?" Tommy swallowed hard. "Just Carmine. But he's solid." "Carmine talks to his cousin every Tuesday." Goldie cut in. "His cousin worked security for the Costos. You didn't think that mattered?" Sirens wailed in the distance. Standing here wasn't safe, but going back inside was worse. Scar flicked his cigarette into the gutter. "Castellano didn't get here by ignoring warnings. We need to figure out what went wrong, and fast." Inside, Lucia's hand shook as she cleared tables. The weight of what she'd done settled heavy. She'd interfered in something lethal. The 3 men might be gone, but their presence clung like cigarette smoke. The restaurant emptied slowly, chairs stacking, lights dimming. Rain had softened into a drizzle. Lucia stayed behind to clean, even though her shift had ended an hour ago. Anything was better than walking home, alone through the dark after what she'd heard tonight. Maria's voice called from the back. "You did good tonight, Lucia. Go home. I'll finish up." Lucia nodded, though her hands didn't stop moving. She scrubbed the same wine stain over and over, eyes flicking toward the door. That was when she felt it, a shift in the air. Someone was behind her. She turned and gasped. Don Vito Castellano stood there, framed in the doorway, the rain outlining his figure in shards of silver. Marco and Dom flanked him like shadows. "Signorina," he said softly, "we need a word." Lucia's mouth went dry. Is something wrong, sir? He stepped closer, his voice calm but heavy with authority. You saved my life tonight. That's not something I ignore. But I need to know how and why. Marco locked the door behind them. The sound echoed like a gavel. Lucia's fingers tightened on the rag. I heard them. The men in booth 7. They said they'd attack when you said salute. I didn't think, I just acted. Dom's eyes narrowed. How do you understand what they said? They spoke Sicilian. Lucia froze. My grandmother was Sicilian. She lied quickly. I picked up a few words. Vito studied her in silence, the waiter's gaze pressing down until it was almost unbearable. A few words, huh? He murmured. Enough to save a man's life. Impressive. He turned to Marco. Get their faces to Franco. Find out who they are. Lucia exhaled in relief. He believed her, or at least pretended to. But when his eyes came back to her, they weren't warm. They were curious, calculating. You live alone? He asked. Yes. Not anymore. She blinked. What? Until we know who sent them, you stay under protection. Someone wants me dead. If they saw you warn me, they'll want you dead too. Lucia opened her mouth to protest, but one look from him silenced her. He didn't make suggestions. He gave orders. Marco will take you home, he said. Pack a bag. You're coming to the estate. The Castellano estate wasn't a home. It was a fortress dressed as one. Iron gates, motion sensors, walls thick enough to stop a tank. Lucia stood in the marble foyer, clutching her single suitcase, feeling wildly out of place. A mechanic's daughter from Naples, now surrounded by chandeliers and armed guards. Don Vito appeared from a side room, his suit replaced by a black shirt and slacks, sleeves rolled to his forearms. He moved with quiet authority, every gesture deliberate. You'll stay in the East Wing, he said. Someone will bring you breakfast. Don't wander outside your area. She nodded, trying not to stare, but he caught her looking anyway. You think I'm a monster, don't you? He asked. I think, she said carefully, you're a man everyone fears. His smile didn't reach his eyes. Fear keeps people loyal, but it also makes you lonely. He gestured toward the hallway. Rest. Tomorrow, we find out who tried to kill me. Morning came with gunmetal skies. Lucia barely slept. Her dreams were filled with gunfire and whispers of salute. She found Marco waiting by her door. Boss wants to see you. Vito was in his study, surrounded by files and photographs. We found them, he said without preamble. The 3 from the restaurant. Names are fake, but they work for Salvador Cortez, one of my old associates. Thought he could take my seat at the table. Lucia's stomach turned. So it was a hit? An audition, Vito said grimly. Kill me, take my crown. He handed her a photo. Her blood froze. It was the youngest assassin, the one with the watch. And in the corner of the frame was her apartment building. They followed you home, he said quietly. Her knees went weak. Marco steadied her before she could fall. They know you stopped them, Vito continued. That means you're bait now, whether you like it or not. The trap was set 3 nights later. A charity gala at the Grand Verona Hotel. Public crowded, and the perfect stage for an ambush. Word was spread through the underground that Don Vito would attend unarmed. Lucia was there too, disguised as his assistant. Hair pinned, silver dress shimmering like moonlight, but her eyes were sharp. She'd insisted on being part of it. If they're after me too, I deserve to help stop them. Vito had hesitated, but agreed. Stay close to me, he warned. The ballroom glittered with wealth and deception. Politicians, business moguls, and silent killers pretending to be guests. Lucia held a tray of champagne, scanning faces. Then she saw him, Scar, the leader from Booth 7, watching her from across the room. His scar caught the light like a brand. He's here, she whispered. Vito didn't turn his head. I see him. Scar approached, slow, smiling like a man who'd already won. Beautiful party, he said smoothly, eyes flicking from Lucia to Vito. Mind if I join? Depends, Vito said coldly. You here to toast or to shoot? Scar's smile widened. To finish what we started. He moved fast, hand going for his jacket. But Lucia was faster. She slammed the tray into his face, glass shattering, stunning him long enough for Marco to disarm him. Chaos erupted. Guests screamed. Security swarmed. More gunmen appeared from the crowd. Vito ducked behind a marble pillar, returning fire with calm precision. Lucia dove for cover, heart racing. One man lunged at her, knife flashing, but she grabbed a fallen gun and fired. The attacker dropped. Silence fell like a curtain. Vito stood, breathing hard, surveying the wreckage. 5 men down. 1 captured, Scar. He turned to Lucia, eyes full of something she hadn't seen before. Respect. You handle yourself well. I fix cars, she said shakily. Engines or guns. It's all about knowing where to hit. Later, in the quiet of the study, Vito poured 2 glasses of whiskey. You could have run, he said, handing her one. You didn't. I'm done running, she replied. He studied her for a long moment. You saved me twice now. That's a debt I can't repay. You already did, she said softly. You believe me. A rare smile touched his face. Lucia, in my world, belief is more dangerous than bullets. They drank in silence. Outside, the rain began again, soft, relentless, cleansing. Vito turned toward her, voice low. You ever think about what comes next? She hesitated. For you or for me? For us, he said simply. Lucia met his gaze, the same one that had terrified her days ago. Now it held something else, trust, maybe even longing. I think, she said, setting her glass down, that whatever comes next, we face it together. The city never slept. But for the first time in years, Don Vito Castellano did. Peacefully, knowing the woman who'd saved him once would do it again if she had to. And somewhere in the darkness, another whisper rose. Not of death this time, but loyalty, love, and the strange redemption found in the unlikeliest places. Because sometimes the waitress isn't just a witness. She's a weapon fate didn't see coming.